Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. The second leg of Real Madrid versus PSG took centre stage in the Champions League when Ancelotti and Pochettino pit their wits against each other. A stunning comeback meant that the second leg ended 3-1 to Madrid, with Benzema scoring a hat-trick after Mbappe's opener. So overall, Real went through 3-2 on aggregate. The XG ended 2.12 to 1.43 to Madrid. But what tactics did both managers use? Let's take a look. And just before then, I'm delighted to be working with my fantasy football app of choice yet again, Spitch. Spitch is a subset of OneFootball, and here's why I personally love it. Firstly, the prizes are given out weekly, so if you forget to update your team one week, the next week is a fresh slate, so it's an even playing field. The scoring is also not just about goals and assists, it also rewards blocks, tackles and more, so your Kantes and Rodris are actually viable options. For example, in my team this week, Rudiger and Chalobah came up big for me. And you can play on free pitches or paid for pitches, and either way you can still win cash prizes. And speaking of prizes, if you click the link down below, you can be a part of their prize winning raffle for the next 3 Premier League match days. So download Spitch for absolutely free through the link in the description below to give it a go and help support the channel. And also make sure you join the FMS EPL community within Spitch, which is linked down below too, and I'll shout out the best performers. Spitch is currently UK and Ireland only and 18 years and older, so just register with your ID when you sign up. Let's begin with PSG on the ball, as they had slightly more of it. As always, PSG trusted in the technical ability of their backline and looked to build up short. And Real often looked to press high, as they were behind of course. Asensio could push up alongside Benzema to create a 2 versus 2 against the centre-backs. To cover the PSG fullbacks, Vinicius stayed wide to cover Hakimi, whilst down the right, Carvajal pushed up to look after Mendes, while the midfield was roughly man-to-man. Due to their technical ability, PSG was still often able to play out despite the pressure, but later on in the game, this went against them and led to their downfall. But in open play, to deal with the press, we would often see Paredes or Verratti drop into the backline to be the spare man. And again, Real Madrid were trailing in the game, so they had to press, meaning a midfielder would follow. At this point, any of the PSG front three could drop into the space vacated to receive and look to turn, or just to maintain their numerical advantage in the midfield. However, as Mendes tended to push high up the pitch, Asensio would look to track back, meaning there was no need to have 3 men deep, and instead they could have 4 in midfield as Messi tended to drift deep in this phase. Hakimi in particular had the onus of looking to dominate the entire right flank, because Messi drifted central, and to compensate for this gaping hole, Danilo would often drift to right centre back. We can see this in the average positions. So Hakimi tended to be more of an outlet option, but PSG's main aim was to overload the left-hand side, as this allowed Mbappe to operate on his preferred left-hand side and both Messi and Neymar in their preferred central positions. When Mbappe did stay wide, Asensio could cover Mendes, and Carvajal could cover Mbappe. However, Mbappe would often drift infield at times, and Asensio was unwilling to drop all the way into the backline. This meant that Mendes could be free to receive on the outside and then combine with Mbappe, or run in behind himself, which would often lead to danger. And what the makeshift PSG back 3 with wing-backs allowed was both full-backs to become the wing-backs and provide the width, while the front 3 could come central and interchange. So when Verratti and Paredes were on the ball, when pressed, there could be space between the lines. And the front 3 often looked to combine with quick interchanges, leading to many shot-creating actions. But Real were dangerous on the transition, particularly through Vinicius. Having Danilo in this position was great for defending 1 versus 1s and ground duels. However, where Hakimi is more than fast enough to keep up with Vinicius, when Real were able to attack the space behind Danilo on the transition, they had a field day. This even leads to a goal. Real wins the ball back and Modric maneuvers the space to get his head up. Initially, Danilo is in a favourable position against Vinicius, but his pace takes over, meaning that Vinicius can receive the ball in behind. He eventually cuts the ball back to Modric, who can find Benzema for the finish. How about Real in possession though? With Nacho rather than Alaba playing at left back, Real did not really have the option for an overlap down that side. So instead, they switched to a back three when on the ball, with Nacho tucking in and Carvajal pushing right up, whilst Vinicius stayed wide on the left so that these two provided the width. And PSG's front three tended to defend fairly central, and not necessarily pressuring the centre-backs. So this meant that the easy outlets on either side for Real were these wider men, and it would now be up to PSG's midfield to shift across and look to cover, meaning that switches could be effective for Real Madrid. And Real also looked to concentrate their attacks down the left-hand side, and Benzema would often drift into that channel to drag across the midfield, meaning that now a switch to Carvajal would consistently be on. And it should be noted that Real could change the way they attacked in this shape to cause PSG problems. Asensio could take up the right half space to free Carvajal even more. Or Asensio, when Real were behind, could also operate as a second forward alongside Benzema to get numbers in the box, whilst Valverde occupied the half space. And at times, with Mendes somewhat isolated as Mbappe could be caught high, it meant that Valverde could look to overlap and be the one to get the ball in. But, like PSG, Real struggled in the transition, as Militao would often be isolated against Mbappe, so he was always second favourite to any balls over the top. In fact, this leads to Mbappe's opener. Overall, it was a story that PSG fans are too familiar with in the Champions League, with the Parisians snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, meaning they only have the domestic competitions left to play for. Madrid, on the other hand, could look forward to the draw and another trip to the quarter-finals. For the managerial tactical score, Ancelotti earns a 4, as despite the comeback, they were consistently looking vulnerable on the break, and on another day, PSG could have been out of sight much earlier on. Poch doesn't fare any better, also looking vulnerable on the break and not seeing out the victory despite a handy lead by managing the game. But what are your ratings? Drop them down below. And if you enjoyed this video, you may also enjoy the FMS Patreon. On Patreon, you'll get early access to videos, exclusive videos, as well as the ability to vote on various polls and so much more. It's a great way to support the channel, and it is now cheaper than ever. All you have to do is head over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple, or press the card in the top right or the end card at the end of this video. And a special thanks to my patrons, including Edwin, Ref, Kobe Johnson, and Ben. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.